Hi, everybody. It's Christina. Welcome to my front porch. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting me in this amazing adventure. And for those of you that have been checking out my blog posts on myfrontporchstories.com or following me through my social media at the same name, thank you so much. But if you haven't had the opportunity to read them firsthand, I would like to take the time now to share them with you from my own personal reading. So I'll be reading a couple of chapters at a time, and without any further ado, we'll start here. The journey begins. The drive home from Jacksonville to Memphis takes about 10 hours and 40 minutes, give or take a pit stop or two. For years, I've made the trek across the top of Florida to Tallahassee along the pine tree-laden truck route of Interstate 10. The highway is mostly straight and flat, with no more variation in scenery than exits for Highway 301, 3 indistinguishable exits for Lake City, and then the confusing split between 10 and Interstate 75 to Tampa and Atlanta. You find yourself zoned out after a few hours in a few hills, just trying to maintain your focus as your music fades in and out of signal, driving past the Okefenokee Swamp and the barren stretches that exist between small towns like Live Oak and Madison. From there, you can make your way up to Dothan, Alabama. I prefer to avoid Georgia as much as possible after a nasty speeding violation years ago that ended up costing me over $500. Besides, the 2-lane highways of the mostly scenic state of Alabama are much less trafficked and considerably more interesting. The roads north and south of Dothan provide a lot of local landscapes. You earn a greater appreciation for Southern living, spread out and rural like an authentic William Went painting unfolding before your very eyes. Life gets a bit less interesting once you get onto I-65 through Montgomery to Birmingham, but once you are on Highway 22, the last stretch up through Tupelo, Mississippi into Memphis, you might mistake you are somewhere out southwest. The hills rise higher with jagged excavated stone and few low-lying trees. Mimosas bloom in June, and their pink blossoms litter the slopes checkered amongst the kudzu that has nearly consumed so many country roadsides. I arrived in Memphis at the home of my Uncle Richard and Aunt Paulette around 8 p.m. It's a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Midtown, closer to the declining Hickory Ridge area, just off I-40. The neighborhood would have been easily considered high middle income when developed in the early 1980s. Residents here continue to maintain nice lawns, and the homes are spaced enough apart for privacy while allowing you to be neighborly. Kids still ride their bikes on the street, and people still stroll the sidewalks. Big trees stand in front of yards, and swing sets or pools in the back. And in many ways, to me, it still looks the same as when I was 18 in 1986. Richard and Paulette bought this home on Lovett Drive in 2003, ending a 25-year commitment to their ministry in Griffith, Indiana. Memphis was home for them both, and Paulette's health had not been good prior to the move. A trying battle of breast cancer, sandwiched between 2 major thyroid surgeries, left my once beautiful and graceful aunt gaunt and ghostly. Chemo and radiation made her skin paper-thin and her bones brittle. However, what Paulette lacked in physical strength, she possessed internally in multitudes. The strength she radiated came from an inextinguishable sparkle in her eyes and smile, her faith in God, and her fearless mercy and compassion towards everyone. Then in June of 2005, an unimaginable accident occurred, radiating sadness across our entire family, and nearly took Paulette's beautiful light from us. Their home on Lovett, the first that Richard and Paulette had truly owned outside their parishes, Paulette intended to decorate and garden to her own liking. But the profound nature of her accident left her debilitated, so that her dreams would never come to fruition. Now, 1 bedroom is an office, 1 a place for her permanent live-in nurse Jenny, and Paulette and Richard sleep in the 3rd, Paulette's bed, a railed hospital bed, Richard's a recliner. The main room, or what we would have once called the living room, houses a large queen-size bed left made for guests. It faces a brick fireplace on whose mantel A reduced amount of the Nutcracker statues Paulette once so avidly collected still stand guard. Other rooms remain mostly dusty and unused. The dining room set for entertaining, as if company might walk in at any moment. A seating den sits adjacent with hand-me-down furniture and artifacts inherited from my granny. And like a wooden coffin, a lonely, upright piano haunts the space, gathering dust, waiting for Paulette's slender fingers to once again grace its keys. But it waits in vain. I settle in after my long drive, grab some pizza, and don a mask I've brought with me. We take the utmost precautions around my aunt to prevent any infection from COVID-19. Yet while on the outside to the unaware she may appear frail and perhaps monstrous, I can see only my beautiful aunt and her tenacious ability to survive. In her room, Richard and I make small talk, while Jenny cares for Paulette's many daily needs. The conversation is fast and light. There's an excitement for Richard, who so rarely has visitors. He speaks hurriedly and with vigor. I can tell how happy he is that I'm here. So am I. There will be plenty of time in the days to come for more intense conversation and hopefully more stories. But for now, I know it's enough just to be present and hold my family in love. Now is the time for a love story, that of Richard and Paulette. The audience should not expect a traditional tale of romance and courtship. Those stories are best left to Hollywood. A true love story such as theirs cannot be relegated to such fiction. It is a timeless story of true commitment, giving, and compassion. As we spend the last few hours of the day together with Aunt Paulette, I prepare in my mind the stage I will set for the backdrop of this tender, poignant story, one that must be told. The Girl Next Door. There are not many who have been married for 53 years, and fewer still who can claim to have lived that long in faithful matrimony and still be in love. Most marriages succumb to societal expectations of what marriage is supposed to be, becoming unequally weighted, favoring one over the other. Some others fall prey to the weight of life's performance pressures, driving deep wedges between two people who fail to recognize the division until it is too late. During our interview, my uncle said, "I don't think Granny and Granddaddy, whom we cousins idealized as perfect, would have stayed together if he had not been saved." Richard and Paulette's story is not a conventional love story by any means. Paulette Ferguson was literally the girl next door. Her home could be seen through the yards of two homes that faced my uncle's house across the street. When they met as teenagers, my aunts Ruth and Catherine were 4 and 8 years younger than Richard and often played with Paulette's younger sisters Janice and Cheryl. Richard was virtually unaware of the existence of his future bride during this time, already so enamored with his plans to pursue the ministry. By 10th grade, Richard began working at the local grocery. He dated, but none of the girls made an impression on him, as none of them wanted to be preachers' wives. That year, Richard and Paulette shared an English class. As she sat in the first row, bouffant hair and horn-brimmed glasses, he noticed she was a very sophisticated, beautiful young lady. Still, the observation was not enough to warrant even so much as a first date. A reluctant student, Richard studied hard, seeking to gain the favor of his stern Irish father, despite his disdain for it. Much like his more mischievous older brother Bill, Richard became the class clown and joker. Eventually, my grandfather became fishing buddies with Mr. Ferguson, and the families became acquainted. My aunts tried to get Richard to ask Paulette out, but he was dating her best friend. Then one day, when the best friend was away, Richard was finally and formally introduced to his neighbor. Even then, there were no real sparks. In fact, you might say there was more annoyance. Paulette and her sisters began to commute to school with Bill and Richard every morning. This often made Richard late to an early Bible study that occurred before school, which aggravated him considering Bible study was nearly the only thing in school he cared about. Then one Sunday, the Fergusons decided to visit the family's church, Macon Road Baptist. My grandmother told Richard that Paulette would be in his department and she wanted him to be friendly to her. Richard led the music in the intermediate department made up of teenagers, and it just so happened that day the normal pianist didn't show up. Knowing that Paulette played the piano, Richard invited her to fill in. Quote, my mother told me to be friendly to her, and so I was, and I've been friendly to her ever since. Though through junior and senior year, their courtship was not particularly romantic. They began to date around church functions, socializing with their Christian friends and family at revivals and other church events. Between work and school, they had little time for anything else. What made Paulette stand out from her peers was that she wanted to be a preacher's wife. Richard was looking for one, and Paulette could play piano, so he thought it was a pretty good match. Richard continued to work at the grocery after high school, and Paulette began working at the phone company. After graduation, Richard attended Mid-South Bible College to pursue his dream of becoming a minister. Still not fond of school, he continued to work hard at it without the support and approval of his father, who thought he should pursue a career in the fire department like his older brother. Paulette became a member of Macon Road and not only sang in the church ensemble, but wrote the church paper. She was well on her way to becoming the epitome of a bride of the church. Then came time for Richard to finalize his degree in the liberal arts. Perhaps in a subconscious effort to rid himself of the daily reminder of his dad's disapproval, Richard chose Tennessee Temple in Chattanooga for his continuing education. At the time, Richard had not given much thought to marriage, but when Paulette found out about Richard's decision, she told him, "You're not going without me." And so after nearly 3 years, the couple married on December 30th, 1966, ready to begin a new life in a new year. With no job and no parental approval from either the Fergusons or my grandparents, Richard and Paulette moved nearly 400 miles from the westernmost corner of the state to the easternmost corner. Their first home would be a small studio apartment that rented for nearly $50 per month, including utilities. Richard got another job at a Kroger grocery, and Paulette became a housewife. They led a modest but good life they were proud to call their own. Richard's brothers and sisters visited occasionally, and holidays made Chattanooga feel more like home. After graduation, Richard went on to achieve his master's in divinity in 1972. They moved to a larger apartment. Paulette became pregnant and was immediately put on bed rest due to prior miscarriages. Every day, Richard would come home from school for lunch to care for her before heading to work. He was a dutiful and diligent husband. They had the obligatory dog, a baby on the way, and nothing but a bright future ahead.